I want to thank everybody for taking their Saturday to come out here and be with us. I'm really happy to see some faces here that I recognize, lots of new faces, people I haven't seen in a very long time. You are taking part in something that is truly historic, something that I don't think has ever been done before, a hybrid classical concert political rally. I don't know how this is going to go. Yeah, exactly. People should know this is also an international movement. We have started a process every Friday morning here where we've had over 50 nations come on our calls and participate. Past presidents, ex-elected officials, diplomats of all kinds have joined in on these calls and have started an international movement. And I want you all to know that there is an international audience watching as well at home right now as what we do here. And it is my pleasure to introduce my dear friend and U.S. Senate candidate running against Kirsten Gillibrand, Diane Sare.
Thank you. So before I introduce our first guest, I want to thank all of our guests. And we wanted to actually allow all of you to hear the maximum from the speakers, who are all geniuses in their own way because they are courageous. The people who are here today are people of courage. All of us know that with this horrific war drive that we're in, the censorship is vamping up and the attempt to silence people. Neither Jose nor I has been invited to a single debate. So I take that as a compliment. And if you want to really feel sick, or maybe it's better than laughing gas, you could listen to the debate between Kirsten Gillibrand and Mike Sapricone, the Democrat and Republican Senate nominees. Neither one of them could give Israel enough weapons or Ukraine enough territory to beat the other one. It was really quite something. So I said that about all of these speakers because while I will introduce the first speaker, we are not going to be running back and forth and introducing everyone else. This is going to flow like a composition, and happily, since our speakers are truth tellers, they're also not egomaniacs, so they don't desire to have long, flowery introductions that are going to prevent them from getting their message out.
In an article written in August 1971, Nixon pulls the plug. Lyndon LaRouche forecast that the policies announced by Nixon on August 15th meant the end of the 1944 Bretton Woods Agreement. He warned that it would be replaced by an austerity regime modeled on that imposed in Germany by Hjalmar Schacht, Hitler's Minister of Finance, who was placed in that position by the head of the Bank of England, Sir Montague Norman. LaRouche's forecast has proven to be accurate, as we are now at the end of a more than 50-year arc of a global paradigm of parasitical looting administered by the International Monetary Fund and backed by the military force of the United States and NATO. As this transformation was underway, LaRouche offered an alternative. In June 1975, his proposal was published in a pamphlet, How the International Development Bank Will Work. As the economic degradation introduced by the Nixon paradigm shift deepened, LaRouche and his wife, Helga Zepp-LaRouche, engaged in an organizing campaign which took them all over the world, promoting his idea of multilateral economic cooperation for mutual development, based on his concept of physical economy, of a system of national credit issued by sovereign nations to produce real physical wealth, not phony monetary valuation and debt. It is this concept which is being worked out by the BRICS nations at their recent summit in Kazan, Russia. The attempt to defeat LaRouche by slander and political persecution has failed. And after his passing in February 2019, it has been kept alive by his wife, Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who has participated in hundreds of events and conferences since 1975, from Moscow to Mumbai, from Peru to Shanghai, and she is known in China as the Silk Road Lady. So when the media reports that the idea of the BRICS comes from Jim O'Neill of Goldman Sachs, you should recognize this as a sign of desperation to divert the potential of the BRICS into a monetarist scheme to protect the bankrupt unipolar order. Mrs. LaRouche initiated the International Peace Coalition more than a year ago to provide an alternative to war and genocide, and drafted the Fundamental Principles as a discussion paper to provide an historical and philosophical approach to durable peace through a transition to a new security and development architecture. It is my honor and great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Helga Zepp-LaRouche.
Dear friends of peace and humanity, the United States of America were once considered all over the world as a beacon of hope and temple of liberty. But most Americans today are probably not aware that the United States has become the most feared country in the world, because it tries to remain the world hegemon in an unipolar world at a moment when the world has long become a multipolar world. There are presently 2 regional wars in Ukraine and in Southwest Asia, which are threatening each to escalate into a regional and even a global nuclear war. If that happens, it will be followed by a global nuclear winter and all life on Earth will disappear. But there are also epochal changes going on worldwide. The BRICS countries have just expanded to 22 countries, representing 4.6 billion people, and with that, 57% of the world population. These nations of the global south are already the global majority, and they are determined to end the period of 500 years of colonialism by building a new world economic system which will allow them to industrialize and overcome poverty and underdevelopment. They are building a great new development bank of the global south, a new investment platform, a new BRICS grain exchange, and other institutions which will help them to grow. It is the most urgent task for re-establishing world peace that the United States supports this effort. We must remember that the American War of Independence was the first anti-colonial war in history by establishing independence of America from the British Empire. In that spirit, the United States must now support the effort to establish a new, more just and equitable world economic order. If the United States would take a cooperative attitude to this emerging system and even become a part of it, virtually all problems in the world would become manageable and could be overcome. The United States is often called a melting pot, meaning that people from all over the world have immigrated to the United States to find a better life. What is now necessary is that the United States cooperates with the 22 countries of the BRICS and all other countries of the global majority, that their countries can also build up to be prosperous middle-income countries where people want to stay because it is their home. If the United States and European nations would do that, the enormous refugee crisis in the world could be solved in a human way. The migrant crisis would disappear. People from these countries would not risk their life only to drown in the Mediterranean or die on their flights throughout Central America in order to reach the wall at the US-Mexican border. If we want to avoid that the world and all human life on Earth is destroyed in a global thermonuclear war, then we have to learn the lesson of the Peace of Westphalia, which ended 150 years of religious warfare in Europe because the warfaring parties realized that there would probably be nobody left alive to enjoy the victory, since all would be dead if the fighting continues. How much more is that true in the age of nuclear weapons? Let us therefore create a new international security and development architecture which takes into account the interest of every country on the planet and build an indivisible community of security. Let us stop wasting valuable resources by waging war in countless ways and use these resources instead to rebuild America, to rebuild the infrastructure of the cities and countryside, build modern transport systems, improve education and health care, and invest in all the projects of the common good. America has lost its way. The violence, school shooting, drug addiction have to stop. Let us replace hatred and aggression with love and care for humanity, for the people in the United States at home, but let us also mobilize compassion for humanity as a whole. Never before in history has humanity been tested so profoundly for our moral fitness to survive as now. Let us mobilize within ourselves our innate goodness, that capacity for infinite love of mankind, which will enable us to pass this test positively. Let's replace confrontation with cooperation. Let us finally establish a true peace order worthy of the human species.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you today. I never would have thought that I'd be walking up on stage after hearing a chorus dedicated to being against the ghouls of war. It's a good thing to be against, by the way, but I'm sort of what they're singing against, if you take a look at my background. I am the living personification of a ghoul of war. That's who I am. I've struggled with it my entire life. It's like, like an addiction. And I admit, I'm addicted to war. I grew up with war. It was part of my adult life. That's how I defined myself for so many years. And it's an ingrained part of who I am, and it's something that I have to recognize as I deal with the world it is today. But I don't think Diane and Jose invited me up here to glorify war, just the opposite. But you can't appreciate peace unless you understand what the consequences of failing to achieve peace are. And the consequences of failing to achieve peace is war, is death, it's destruction. No, the song that should have brought me up here is the song that played in my mind when I went to war for my country. It was AC/DC, Thunderstruck. No offense, guys. You guys are awesome. But Thunderstruck is the song of war. It's a song I listened to. It came out in September 1990 as we were building up this move to go into the Middle East to take on Saddam Hussein for invading Kuwait. Thunderstruck. When I was assigned to the U.S. Central Command in Riyadh, one of the jobs I had was to hunt down Iraqi Scud missiles, and I would go down to the combat camera guys who had all the videotape of the F-15s, A-10s, F-16s as they were bombing suspected Scud sites. And I'd clip them together. I was a battle damage assessment officer at the time, but I'd play them to the soundtrack of Thunderstruck. It was pretty cool. Watch, because you see the video of the thing. And, in war, it's not like Hollywood, guys. As the plane's coming in on the target, the video's a little grainy. It's not very much in focus. The resolution isn't great. But you see a white blob down there. And you go, okay, that's it. And then weapon release, boom, thunderstruck. It was awesome. It was so awesome that I, a Marine, couldn't stand being behind a desk the entire war. No, I had to get into it, guys. This was my moment in time. This is my Lieutenant Dan moment. You know what I'm talking about. Forrest Gump, meant to die for your country. Here I was, safe behind a desk. All I had to do was look at pictures and play rock and roll music and my war would go by. But no, I had to be in the middle of it because I was a Marine. And so I put in a request to go look at some of these destroyed sites. I said, we need to get the guy on the ground to look at it to see what it is we're destroying so we could determine if it's real or if it's not real. And if it's not real, why we're bombing it. And if it's real, how can we bomb it better? And they agreed. They put me in touch with a SEAL team. You guys know the SEALs, don't you? America's finest, or so they claim. As a Marine, I'll never give them credit for that. But these guys operate what they're called fast attack vehicles. They would fly into there. Their job was to rescue pilots. But I wanted to get them to put me in so I could take a look at the debris. They were hesitant at first, but eventually I won them over. I was going to war, my lifelong dream. And we practiced for it. We did our missions, we trained up, and the night we were in isolation, and the night we were going to launch, I'm going to war, we get the phone call, stand down. Somebody taking a look at one of those videos that I used to nominate the target. And they had higher resolution imagery look at it. That white blob on the ground that I was going to go and inspect whether or not it was destroyed missiles, turned out to be a Bedouin tent. And all we were going to find inside was a family of about 16 to 20 Bedouin and their sheep. Thunderstruck. Now, I was disappointed. Not for the reasons you might think I should be. Man, we killed some Bedouins. I was disappointed because I wasn't going to war. And I sat out that night staring up at the stars, feeling sorry for myself. I had an Australian liaison officer next to me. And we were staring up. It was a beautiful night. Stars are there. And I just started projecting myself out because I was really depressed. I was fundamentally depressed. I wasn't going to war. Thunderstruck. But as I pulled out, I realized, wait a minute, I sucked myself into the sky. You guys have heard about when the American astronauts went to the moon and they looked back on Earth and they saw the blue marble and they were just amazed. They had a whole new perspective. It's called the overview effect. Anybody that's gone to outer space has suffered the overview effect. I say suffered, I think it's a blessing because it allows you to realize how fragile life is. And that night I had the overview effect. I went up and I realized that the air base I was on was really just part of a big piece of desert. There was part of an even bigger piece of desert. There was part of a segment of a globe that was round, and the further out I got, the smaller the globe got, and the less significant this war became. Not just less significant, but irrelevant. And not just irrelevant, but totally unnecessary. Why the hell was I so focused on going out and killing Iraqi scuds? Life meant so much more. So much more. And I had one of those moments of clarity where I didn't want to go to war anymore. I wanted this war to be over. I wanted to go home. Next morning, I got up, knocked at my cubicle, and some guys with long hair, mustaches, said, hey, you the guy looking for scuds? I said, yeah, they brought me in to a room. They showed me some videotape. I said, my God, that's a scud decoy. They said, yes. I said, who did this? They said, we can't tell you, but come with us. And they introduced me to a new group of people who were out hunting scuds. Long story short is, I got sent to a different base in Saudi Arabia, and now I'm going back to war. And I'm excited by it again. My God, I'm going to go to war. I get to do it. I get to live my lifelong dream. Now, I was very aggressive about this, too aggressive. General Schwarzkopf, who was the commander, found out that I was trying to be inserted into Western Iraq to capture this scud decoy and bring it back. And he had me arrested. And yeah, had me arrested and had me flown back to Riyadh where I was to stand charges. They dropped the charges because they realized I was just a young Marine captain trying to go to war, as all young Marine captains are wont to do. But I think back, you know, I fought real hard. I met with the Delta guys. No, it's Delta Force, I just gave away a secret here. And we planned the operation. I met with the Task Force 160 guys, they're the helicopter guys. We had the whole mission planned out. We're gonna fly in, Delta was gonna secure the LZ, I was gonna go out, help strap it up, bring it up underneath a C8 or MH47, and we're gonna fly it back out. Wow, thunderstruck. Later, a couple years, I was a UN weapons inspector in Iraq, and we were talking to the Iraqis responsible for Scud missiles and such. And I got to interview a general, interview is more like an interrogation, a general and some of his officers. And we were talking about this period of time. And I mentioned that, you know, we were actually going to capture one of these. And he said, really? Where? And I pointed on the map. He said, when were you going to do that? And I told him the date. And they brought out the documents. They had prepared an ambush for us that night. Had we flown in that night, I wouldn't be here. I'd probably be dead because they were waiting for us. It was an act of God to get the general pissed off at me so much that he arrested me and canceled the mission. But had we gone forward with the mission, I'd be dead. And so a bunch of other Americans, thunderstruck. And I think back on that. Was it divine intervention? I don't know. But I do realize that that moment of overview, when I sat back and I looked at the world, I think maybe that opened the door into my black heart for somebody to look down and say, that's a soul that could be redeemed. That's a soul where there's some hope. That's a soul I can do something with. So he let me live. And ever since then, I've been trying to redeem my past, my dark past, thunderstruck. I'm here today because of people like Diane Sare and Jose Vega, people like you who are here to listen to them, to support them, people like you who sing the songs of peace, people like all of us who cherish life. We should all experience the overview. Take a moment, sit back, look at the world from beyond and understand how fragile it is and how utterly important it is for all of us to work so hard with all of our might to preserve whatever power that may be above there has blessed us with enjoying. I want to thank you again for coming out today. I thank you for supporting Diane, for supporting Jose. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for serving peace. Thunderstruck.
History. There have been hundreds of empires in the 5,000 years of human history we know something about. In the 3,000 we know a great deal about, with approaching modernity teaching us even more. There have been hundreds. All of them are gone. Every one of them. Every single one of them. The Persian, the Eastern and Western Roman, the Mongol, the Mughal, the Ottoman, the Third Reich of Adolf Hitler, even the empire upon whom it was said the sun never set, the British Empire, gone. Look at Britain today, Washington's poodle, if that. The one distinguishing feature of the current empire, your empire, America, for that is surely what we are, is we invented the means that no other empire in human history has ever had at its beck and call to extinguish human life. If you saw the film Oppenheimer, you know how we did it. It's a pretty good film, pretty accurate film. You know how we did it. That alone makes us unique, horribly unique, perhaps. Part two, the screamingly current events. 2 a.m. this morning, I get up, my phone just buzzed, I look at it, it's Nima Al-Khurshid. You may know him from a show called Dialogue Works. He broadcasts from a little village in Brazil, south of Sao Paulo. He's Iranian by birth, but he's a Brazilian citizen now, and Dialogue Works is a pretty good show. Well, he's already working, and the time zone is the same for us and him. He's already working on the ongoing Israeli attack on Iran. Only he's working on it not from MSNBC or CNN or any polluted propagandistic organ in the American empire. He's working on it from the point of view of a journalist. And he's talking to people, and he's talking to me, and we're texting back and forth, and I'm getting an update on the Israeli strike on Iran, which, of course, the whole world that knew anything about the whole world was waiting for, not eagerly, but certainly to see what would happen. What was happening, according to people on the ground in Tehran and people on the ground in Jordan and in Israel, primarily Tel Aviv, and people reporting on it who have essentially the right attitude about journalism, was that Israel was being defeated. I don't know if it was Russian S-400s or whatever, but I was hearing that what they were doing was not having much impact. Yeah, a few bombs went off, a few things, a few fires and so forth, but nothing of significance. I was even watching a video furnished me by one person who was in Tehran of Iranians out in the street filming with their cell phones. And yet, as the morning went on and I picked up the U.S. news, I saw the usual propaganda, that the attack had come off, that great damage had been done, 100 Israeli planes went out. At the same time, I was picking up some good information from Al Jazeera and others about how badly the Israelis are doing in Lebanon. Frankly, they're getting their rear end handed to them. They're losing more people probably than the IDF at wartime in a tight period has ever lost. Well, why do I connect these two now? And here's the sad part of my message. I connect them because that is the arena right now, and don't forget Ukraine because it's one of them too, but this is the premier arena right now for someone using a nuclear weapon. Because unlike what I was hoping, that Israel would take what it's done and say it's over, and Iran would take what was done to it, which apparently was not all that bad, and say it's over, and this 11 times to the arena lawyer for Bibi Netanyahu, Tony Blinken, would actually succeed in doing something, and maybe we'd have a halt to this. But then as the train pulled into Moynihan, I started getting texts that were quoting what Netanyahu, Yoav Gallant, and some of the others were saying, and quoting what some of the Iranians were saying. And it looks like we're off to the races again, that Iran is going to respond in a spectacular way, and that, of course, Israel will respond to that. This is, to me, an ineluctable chain to an eventual use of a nuclear weapon. If Ukraine is not, the Levant, the Middle East certainly is. This is a very dire moment because you have this situation that could go off at any second. And I have no doubt that Golda Meir's comment to a BBC reporter in 1972 was accurate when he asked her point blank if Israel were in existential duress, would it use a nuclear weapon? And she, without batting an eye, said yes. I have no doubt Bibi Netanyahu is a far worse scoundrel than Golda Meir was. So that's the second part of my story. What do we do about that? We need to get out there. We need to do everything we possibly can to let our government know that not only do we want both of these wars to stop, we definitely don't want a nuclear weapon to be used. And that we will do everything in our power, even though we are operating as Israel's lawyer, to stop that from happening. Thanks.
He calls me by the thunder, the trumpet sounds within my soul.
Moving. And you're welcome to sing along, just don't annoy your neighbor. We have coming up the man who needs no introduction, Jimmy Dore.
Thank you. I'm not going to lie, it's been a bit of a bummer so far, and a little too much war talk as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what you guys have against jobs, but anyway, I'll tell you this. I don't know exactly what's happening in Ukraine, but I do know whatever the government and the news media is saying is happening, that's the truth. And sure, they've lied about every war in my lifetime. They lied about Vietnam through 4 different presidents. They lied about Iraq twice, Afghanistan for 20 years, Libya, Yemen. But when it comes to Ukraine, I just think they're telling the truth this time. It's amazing that we're ending like every empire ends. We overextend militarily while we hollow out our own country and defund it. It was amazing how they sent $113 billion to Ukraine just like that. Imagine if they wanted to send $10 billion to America, which would, by the way, pay for community colleges for the whole country. That would take a decade or two. That would require town halls. That would require op-eds. Anderson Cooper would have to put on a T-shirt and interview regular people on the street. $10 billion, that's a lot of money. Do you really want your tax dollars going towards college education? But $113 billion out the door, no discussion, to the most corrupt country in all of Europe with no oversight at the blink of an eye. That's how you know it's about helping people. I mean, imagine what we could do with that money instead. Imagine what we could do with that money back here in the United States. You know, they say you can end homelessness for $20 billion. So for $100 billion, they could have ended homelessness, then started it again, then said, we were just kidding, and then fucking ended it again. Don't you think for $100 billion, they could have taken some of that money and bought a dog that would lead Joe Biden off stage when he's done giving his speech? It's weird. I notice every time we do go to war, it's never for what the American people think it is. And like, for instance, Lindsey Graham just announced a couple of months ago that there's $11 trillion worth of natural resources and minerals underneath Ukraine. He just blurted it out, like his boyfriend's name on Valentine's Day. And then we find out there's $500 billion worth of gas and oil in Gaza and off the shore. I'm starting to get a little pattern recognition here. And I wonder when the American people will wake up. Well, hopefully people like Jose and Diane can help them wake up, and events like this and voices like yours will do that. And now we're stuck in, people ask me, they say, Jimmy, what do you think is going to happen with Israel-Palestine? And I say, I think it's going to work itself out. And it's kind of unbelievable. I have friends who are Zionists, and they try to get me to go along with the carpet bombing of Gaza. And they say things like this. They say, Jimmy, I know that you support the LGBTQ community. You know who doesn't, Jimmy? Hamas. Hamas doesn't support gay people. What do you say to that? And I say, I guess we should slaughter their children. Yeah. It's tough jokes for tough times. It's amazing how they try to get you to go along with every war. They have to dehumanize the other people that they want to slaughter, right? Like I remember with the Syrian war, which was the same thing, they would show ISIS, and they would show these terrorists with a kitchen knife on TV, and then they would cut their heads off with a kitchen knife, and people are like, oh my God, they're barbarians. You see that? They cut his head off with a kitchen knife. They're barbarians. And I was like, yeah, why don't they, do what we would do and just blow their head off with a nice Christian bomb made by Christians in a nice Christian bomb factory? That's what Jesus would do. It's kind of amazing to see the arguments that people make for supporting a murderous regime and a genocide in Gaza right now. They'll say things like, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. And I'm like, you know why? Because we overthrew all the other fucking democracies so we could steal their oil. I've had people on my show say, well, having Israel as our ally in the Middle East is like having our own aircraft carrier in the Middle East. And I was like, yeah, unfortunately, that aircraft carrier has a concentration camp right in the middle of it. Ha, 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 ha. Anyway, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do want to read to you one of my favorite quotes from Eisenhower. And I have to put on my glasses. I'm old now. And he said, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. This is not a way of life at all in any true sense. Under the clouds of war, it is humanity hanging on a cross of iron." And he was a bit of a bummer, and but those are true statements. And right now, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for listening, and I want to introduce a fellow who's a true inspiration to me. There is no greater joy that I can experience in this day and age than watching a video of Jose Vega do an intervention on a neoliberal war pig and watching the look on their face. And watching the look on their face when they're confronted by the truth and their own hypocrisy. So I'm going to introduce a man who I refer to as Joe Rogan without a gym membership, the love child of Charo and Michael Tracy's chest hair. Please welcome to the stage, Jose Vega.
I don't even know what to say to that. It's quite amazing that I could gather so many of my friends in a room to be here to all declare our independence. And I was thinking a lot about how I wanted to start what I have to say. And the first thing I want to do is I want to actually start by giving the biggest thanks to my dad, because my dad has been my #1 supporter and biggest fan since I told him maybe about 10 years ago that I was thinking about getting into politics for the first time. I was about 15 years old, and he just said, "You know what, son, do what you got to do." The thing about my dad is that my dad actually recently met Ray McGovern, and he told Ray McGovern something that I didn't even know. I knew my dad was drafted into the Salvadorian Civil War when he was young. I didn't know how young. He told Ray, "Yeah, I was 14 years old when I was illegally drafted into the Salvadorian Civil War." And so my dad was 14 years old. He was a child soldier, and his job was to go and kill the Contras, which was a U.S.-funded war on both sides. And my dad is just some 14-year-old kid who's caught up in a war that he has no idea about. He's just told he has to go and kill some people because they have different colored uniforms or bandanas and a different flag, and therefore it's his job to go and kill them. And all that changed after my dad left when he was about 16, 17 years old. He had to illegally jump the border. They wouldn't let him through because at the time, they didn't believe that he was actually Salvadorian because all Salvadorians are fair-skinned. And my dad is my same shade of skin. And so they said, "There's no way you're from El Salvador. We're not going to give you refugee status." So he had to come in the country illegally. My dad is an example of people around the world today who are brainwashed when they're young and told that there are people around the world who hate them. Now, thankfully, today my dad is actually a Christian who has done a lot of preaching now, and he preaches for peace, and he admires what I do in trying to call other people to stand up for peace and declare their independence. And so I just want to dedicate what I'm about to say to my dad. That is the one person that I always neglect to thank in everything I do. And what is it that exactly I do and we do? See, people said, oh, people are here coming for you. No, Diane and I are coming for you. You're not coming here for us. We're coming here for you. Because our job is to shock the consciousness and the conscience of Americans and of America. People may remember that when I confronted Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she looked at me and she was frozen and she didn't really know what to say, and she said, I can't hear you. And it took her 3 to 4 days to respond and say, actually, what they said, it doesn't matter, because they're right-wing Trump supporters. They're part of this weird cult called the LaRouche people. They were going around something about eating babies or something 4 years ago. This is what she said. And yeah, we did do that. But and what we did to her was put her in a kind of crisis of faith in that moment where she knew she was wrong, and every fiber of her being was to stand with us, and she couldn't because she was a sellout. And what we are trying to do here, what we will do here, is we are not just going to do that to all the politicians. We're not just going to do that to our citizens and our fellow citizens. We are doing it to America as a whole, because we were founded on a principle of independence and freedom. We were founded on a principle of declaring our independence from oligarchy, from unjust and prejudice. And we were founded on a principle of freedom. And one of those foundational freedoms was our freedom of speech. To stand up against injustice and lies, and to tell the truth when everyone tells you you are wrong. To look at authority in the face and say you are lying. That is the intervention principle, and it is our job and everybody's job who is listening to call upon the greater angels of your nature and of your country's history. Look at the great figures of history that define this nation, like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Abraham Lincoln, President FDR, and President Kennedy. And we are to invoke them into the consciousness of America today, to remind people that America is not the British Empire. We are not citizens of Britain. We are not subjects. We are citizens, and with that, there is a responsibility to constantly declare your independence, to constantly fight for non-violence. But don't get it twisted. Non-violence is not the absence of war. Non-violence is perpetual, productive creativity. Non-violence is building enough housing so that no one has to go without a home at night. No one has to be hungry at night, so that everyone can develop themselves to their fullest capabilities, to be as creative as possible so that they can leave something behind for the next generations of people to come long after they are dead, long after this earth that we love so much has been swallowed up in a ball by the sun, and we are living and spread out amongst galaxies across the cosmos. That's how far we have to think. What do I want a child born in the year 2099, when hopefully I'm in a wheelchair, not dead yet? But what do I want that child's life to look like from the day he is born to the day he is dead? And why do I want it to be infinitely better than anything I could have ever had? And why should I allow that child to make sure that he can make a child born in the year 2199's life infinitely better than his? That is what it means to be a human being, and that is what it means to be an American, but that is also what it means to be a world citizen. And you have to actively declare your independence. So next time you are in a room when someone is lying to you, when someone is telling you that war is peace, you have to stand up, look them in the face, and tell them you are wrong and you are lying, and we are here to declare our independence.
Hello, my name is Ray McGovern, and I'm speaking to you on behalf of a wonderful young man who's running for Congress. His name is Jose Vega. Now, he comes from the same, well, he's running in the same district of the Bronx that I grew up in for my first 22 years before I went in the Army. I lived on Bainbridge Avenue near Fordham Road, okay? Jose gives me hope, a sparse commodity these days. Why? Because he's smart, because he knows what he's talking about, and most of all, he's courageous. And for those of you who know a little about virtue, courage is the basis of all virtue. Without courage, all of the virtues are specious. So look at his interventions to demonstrate that. Now, I'm proud of having someone that I can look at in the Bronx that represents you all, like the common people. Bainbridge Avenue was pretty middle class and lower class, and we had everybody there, okay? Now it's a very vibrant community, mostly Latino, and it's great, okay? So what I'd say is, look, we need to have somebody there who's not a creature of some lobby, okay? You got the Israeli lobby. They'll probably try to swift boat Jose in these next 10 days. Don't let them do it, okay? Jose is golden. He gives me hope. I looked up Taurus. You know, I remembered now, Toro. That's the name for bull. And it sort of fits this guy, you know. Add the next part of bull, and you get what diplomats call male bovine excrement, okay? And I looked on Google, and who's to his right? It was unbelievable. Who's to his right? Rudy Giuliani, Nikki Haley. So these are the people that associate with Taurus. Simply, let me say this. With Jose, you won't have anybody winking or keeping his mouth shut about genocide. My God. Genocide that we are not only permitting, but enabling with our arms deliveries to Richie Taurus's patrons, the Israel lobby, okay? So with these wars going on in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Hezbollah territory, and in Ukraine, remember, folks, Julian Assange, a good friend of mine, warned 20 years ago that if wars can be started by lies, they can be ended by truth. And that's what Jose will bring to Congress, the truth, and the truth will set us free. Vota para Jose. Vote for Jose. Thanks for listening.
So first, I want to say that since I didn't get to introduce Jose, I wanted to congratulate you, Jose, for doing an excellent job on your campaign. It's been a weird one. We're here. And the reason that's significant is because we are not in jail, although one person in the chorus is headed off there on Tuesday. And although our nation has been going fascist really since the death of FDR, after the Kennedy assassination, the jailing of Lyndon LaRouche, and the aftermath of 9/11 and probably the pre-math into 9/11, with an accelerating escalation of censorship under the Biden-Harris war administration, we still have enough freedom to change the direction of our nation if we use it. That's why we organized this event. A few years ago, I was telling Jose that my dream was that in the city of New York, no one should be able to come here and tell lies in public. That's happened to some people, but we need more people. This should be a city where people know that when they come, they're not going to be able to lie to the population because someone is going to get up and pull a Jose Vega. So it's not enough, because our government at this moment, and I know many people share my frustration, we know we're out there organizing. The majority of the American people do not support war. The majority of the American people do not support genocide. So why is this happening? It's happening because we haven't stopped our government from doing it. According to our Declaration of Independence, we're obligated to stop the government. It says right in there that if the government has become abusive of these ends, that is, that every human being is created equal and endowed with inalienable rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. If our government becomes abusive of these ends, it is our right and our duty to alter or abolish it. That's what we're supposed to do as American citizens. How do we do that? Not through violence. That won't work, because in the United States, the culture is important. You could overthrow a government in violence. You could vote them out. We could vote out the Harris-Biden administration. But what guarantees that what comes next will be any better unless the population itself changes? That is, we have to be enlightened enough and good enough and love mankind enough to have the wisdom not only to choose good leaders, but to be good leaders. That's why we're here. And that's why the music is such a big part of this program. It is not going to help us to dump Dick Cheney if we are not good enough to make our government uphold the principles of justice and human dignity. Now, as Helga mentioned earlier, 4 days ago, 57% of the world's population was meeting in Kazan. Isn't that something? It's not on the front page of the New York Times. It's not in the news. But who are we? We're 4% of the world's population. And the nations that have now joined, I'm going to read off so you can consider what this means as partners of the BRICS. Brazil, we have those are the 5. The new partners, Indonesia, Nigeria, Vietnam, Turkey, Thailand, Uganda, Algeria, Uzbekistan, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, Bolivia, Cuba, Belarus. That's more than 1 billion people who have just become associated with the BRICS. Someone said that the leader of Turkey, Erdogan, is probably the only person in the world who could figure out how to be in BRICS and NATO at the same time. So the musical selections that are going to come up now, we're going to have a tour of the world, and it's designed really to reflect the choral principle, where the chorus, and they will tell you, and when we were in COVID and we had to listen to everyone singing individually, I will tell you, everyone is very individual. And I will tell you that, no offense to the chorus or myself, I'm there with you, every voice in our non-audition amateur chorus is not an operatic superstar. But somehow, when we bring this chorus together, and each of them contributes their own unique talent on their own separate part, you produce something which is greater than the parts. The whole is greater than the parts. We're going to hear some compositions by Dvorak, who came here to the United States on the mission to create a great and noble school of classical music. And he said that the music of the Native American population and the African American population was the seed crystal for everything that we needed to have our own classical culture in the United States. And that began, and it took root, but we had a very ugly shift with Jim Crow. He left, and we didn't get to complete the development of the American conservatory and tradition of classical music, but you will find relics of it. So we're now approaching the 250th anniversary of the founding of our republic. And I think it's a question whether we are going to continue as a republic, and that's up to us. And I wanted to share with you some words from our first president, George Washington, in his farewell address, and you might consider their relevance in the situation we face today. He said, "The nation which indulges toward another an habitual hatred or an habitual fondness is in some degree a slave. It is a slave to its animosity or to its affection, either of which is sufficient to lead it astray from its duty and its interest. So let us stop being slaves."
When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. No more shall they in bondage toil. Let my people go. God said, let them come out with Egypt's spoil. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. When they had reached the other shore, let my people go. They sang a song of triumph o'er. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh,
We have been, and first of all, I want to again emphasize the international audience that's watching. Thank you. I'm sure it's probably really late in some countries like China, which happens to be about 12 hours ahead of us. So for those who are watching in those countries who are staying up late, thank you. This is a message of greetings from Dr. Tour and Mohammed Salim Akhtar. Mohammed Salim Akhtar is the National Director of the American Muslim Alliance, and Dr. Mohammed Ashraf Tour, President of the Pakistan American Democratic Forum, issued a joint statement of greetings. We honor and express our support for the peace rally and thank the organizers. The Sare and Vega election campaigns for U.S. Senate and Congress. As acknowledged by the World Jury, the International Criminal Court, and the majority of countries, and also echoed by many, including Mian Shahbaz Sharif, Prime Minister of Pakistan, that the apartheid state of Israel has committed crimes against humanity, genocide of Palestinians in occupied Palestine. It's deplorable that the United States has been complicit by providing billions of dollars of arms to the killing machine of Israel, despite millions of citizens who have been protesting and opposing the administration and been demanding peace initiatives. We demand the equitable, peaceful, and just resolution to all the conflicts and political, social, economic, and military aggressions anywhere, including Palestine and Ukraine. This is why we support the establishment of a new security and development architecture for the whole world. Okay, please do not mind the chorus as they take their back for their final performances. I have another message to be read. This is a message from Steve Leeper. This is the chairman of the Peace Culture Village in Hiroshima, the co-founder of the Peace Education Art Communication Institute. He is the coordinator in Atlanta, Georgia for the Hub of Back from the Brink, former chairman of the Hiroshima Peace Culture Foundation, Secretariat of Mayors for Peace, and I'm pretty sure he was also just nominated, if not won, a Nobel Peace Prize. Could be wrong on that. But he says, message sent with regret to Diane Sare, Jose Vega, and everyone else at the Build a Peace Chorus against the Ghouls of War program in New York City. Thank you. Wish I were there. You are building peace at a time when the ghouls of war appear in complete control, and I, as a Hiroshimian, am grateful. A few days ago, as I was absorbing my daily dose of horror and rage, a cheerful vision lifted me from my routine despair. It occurred to me that Ukraine and Palestine, among many other ghoulish atrocities, are the darkest hour that comes just before dawn. The Israelis in particular have ripped the mask off. The culture of war stands exposed for the selfish, cruel, and absurdly self-destructive mindset it inherently is. Perhaps because the dawn is near, the Nobel Peace Prize Committee suddenly found, 50 years late, the courage to ignore the nuclear industry. My love and respect for thus far unsung and even now vastly underappreciated Nihon Hidanko greatly exceeds the limits of this brief message. I am simply grateful that even the Nobel Committee has seen fit to express its preference for human survival. Humanity is attempting to evolve from caterpillar to butterfly. The caterpillar is fighting desperately to keep that from happening, and the butterfly cells are still too few and too little united. All of us few, like the Nobel Committee, would prefer to keep this planet habitable, must now bring our respective lights together to focus like a giant global laser on the prevention of nuclear war. Everything else depends on success in this endeavor. If every segment of our peace culture can rally effectively around the anti-war nuclear flag, we will crack the chrysalis and start squirming to the next level. If the caterpillar wins, humanity will join the dinosaurs with no one to blame but our own selfish, competitive selves. Steve Leeper.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello and peace be upon you. My name is Yafa, and I am a Palestinian. Just as our poet Mahmoud Darwish said, we Palestinians are sick. We suffer from an incurable disease called hope. Hope for liberation and independence. Hope for a normal life. Hope to see our children go to school without danger. Hope for a pregnant woman to give birth to a living child in a hospital and not in front of a military checkpoint. Hope that our poets will see beauty of the color red in roses and not in blood. Hope that this land will finally find peace. To continue on this path of hope, and in November 1st, 2023, Refaat Hareer, a Palestinian writer, poet, and a university professor, shared his poem titled, If I Must Die. If I must die, you must live, to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who lived in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment, an angel is here, bring back love. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a sail. On December the 6th, 2023, and in Israel's ongoing genocide in Gaza, Refaat Hareer was murdered in an Israeli airstrike, along with his brother, sister, and their children. Refaat Hareer died. Let it bring hope. Let it be a tale. Thank you for carrying this banner of hope with us. And remember, Abraham Lincoln said, the U.S. could not stay divided, half free and half slave. It's time for our freedom. And just as Nelson Mandela said, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians. Thank you.
Shalom
Please sing in the refrain.
Yes, we'll rally round the flag, boys will rally once again,
shouting the battle cry of freedom.
We will rally from the hillsides, we'll gather from the plain,
shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitor, up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
We are springing to the call of our brothers gone before,
shouting the battle cry of freedom.
And we'll fill the vacant ranks with 1,000,000 free men more,
shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitor, up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
We will welcome to our numbers the loyal, true, and brave,
shouting the battle cry of freedom.
And although they may be poor, not a man shall be our slave,
shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitor, up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
So we're springing to the call from the east and from the west,
shouting the battle cry of freedom. And we'll hurl the rebel crew from the land we love the best, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitor, up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
Well, this is the conclusion of our program. First, I want to thank everybody who made it out in New York City this fine Saturday. I want to thank our international audience, of course, for tuning in, being a part of our international process. And I want to thank everybody who's supported us from the very beginning. Thank you all so much for coming here. Thank you for being as supportive and enthusiastic about our campaigns as you've always been. It's kept us going. And thank you. That's all.